Next one, Mr. Morawski.
If we could skip ahead to C-1505, the attorney for that case is here, Mr. Coffey.
And he represents who?
He represents Mr. Russo, Ed Russo, in C-1505. C-1505 is actually part of a trilogy of cases, which included C-1504 and C-1506. They were all filed by the same individual, and C-1505 is against a gentleman named Ed Russo. 1504 was against now presidential candidate Donald Trump, and 1506 was filed against our mayor, Carlos Jimenez, mayor of Miami-Dade County.
The only one you're dealing with right now is Mr. Russo.
Yeah, but just to give you a little bit of background, they're all sort of related to each other. Basically, the allegations were that some time ago, Mr. Trump and the mayor were playing golf together at Crandon Park, and it came up during the conversation that Mr. Trump thought Crandon Park golf course was in horrible disrepair, and the mayor wasn't taking good care of it, and that Trump could turn it into a world-class golf resort. They had some discussions about whether Trump could buy it. The mayor advised him that it's public property, he couldn't buy it, but perhaps he could manage it, and that there was a procedure in place that Mr. Trump could submit what's called an unsolicited proposal to the county, and he could make the proposal to upgrade the facilities and perhaps come to some sort of management agreement. A letter was sent on behalf of the county to Mr. Trump's organization. They responded to it. Some discussions ensued, wherein Mr. Ed Russo comes into the picture. Mr. Russo was hired by Mr. Trump to come to the county and find out what needed to be done to make this golf course deal happen. And Mr. Russo, in fact, met with several county individuals, including Jack Cardis, the director of the Parks Department. Mr. Russo, in fact, did meet with Bruce Matheson, who is a member of the Crandon Park Master Plan Advisory Committee. If you know a little bit of the history of Miami-Dade County, the Matheson family gave all of that property on Key Biscayne to Miami-Dade County in a trust, and so anything that happens to that property has to go through the advisory committee and be approved before anything can change according to the agreement between the Matheson family and the county. Mr. Russo did in my opinion, lobby Mr. Matheson. He met with him and discussed the Trump proposal with him to try to get his approval of it. And in fact, Mr. Russo did appear before the CPAC Advisory Committee in December of 2014, again to advise them of the Trump proposal and to answer any questions that they may have had. Subsequently, Mr. Russo, when he did learn about the complaint being filed against him, he did properly register as a lobbyist. He did come and take our lobbyist course. However, he should have registered, in my opinion, as a lobbyist much sooner, certainly before he appeared before the advisory committee. So my recommendation is that there is probable cause to find that Mr. Russo failed to register as a lobbyist. However, I am recommending that the complaint be dismissed and that he be issued a letter of instruction based on the fact that once he found out he was supposed to register as a lobbyist, he did comply and register as a lobbyist. I don't know, Mr. Coffey, if you would like.
May I offer a few comments?
Certainly, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Commissioner. Factually, there's not much dispute with the report of the advocate. Just as an aside, Mr. Russo was not actually specifically hired for this project. He works on a monthly basis with Mr. Trump on environmental and land use issues. He's not their lobbyist. In this particular situation, it developed that their regular lobbyist, who is Carlos Jimenez Jr., was not available. And so Mr. Trump sort of kind of backed Mr. Russo into it, and he wasn't acquainted with the lobbying requirements. There's certainly no reason to believe that he considered anything he was doing to be lobbying, and as soon as he became aware of a requirement, he registered. So, for example, as the advocate points out, there was no lobbying of county staff. Simply informational exchange. The mayor was certainly not lobbied, and the vast majority of Mr. Russo's activities were purely informational. What it is suggested is that, in his view, again, not his understanding of lobbying, he provided informational exchanges with Mr. Matheson and with the Crandon Park Master Advisory Committee. And I would suggest, and I may be being somewhat mindful of what Joe alluded to, you do have a broad mission here. And I can certainly understand that Mr. Murawski's recommendation is very consistent with that mission, and that is to apply concepts of ethics and compliance broadly. But I would nevertheless suggest that this is a unique situation, and with the utmost respect to the advocate, I think a case could be made that this didn't violate anything. And just to put perspective here, the Crandon Park Master Advisory Committee is a unique creature. I don't think anyone would consider it a traditional county board or a traditional county committee. It wasn't created by ordinance. It was created and came out of a lawsuit, extensive litigation between the county and the Matheson family that led, as we know, to the creation of a wonderful world venue tennis tournament, among other things. But I think there's a not inconsiderable argument to be made that this would not have been strictly considered to be a county committee or a county board. It's, I think one of its members is appointed by a National Parks Commission, another by the Matheson family, two by the county. It's accorded sunshine status, which I think is appropriate. But just, in terms of expressing our position, which is most respectful with respect to the advocate's report and recommendation, I think there's an argument to be made that it is not a county committee or a county board that is subject to the lobbying ordinance, especially when we recognize that any form of sanction, which Mr. Murawski is not recommending, would have to contemplate a penal and strict construction of the ordinance. And I don't believe that applying those analysis that you would necessarily reach the result that this is a county committee or county board. In light of his recommendation, we don't need to reach that point, of course, assuming his recommendation is followed. And I would also suggest, just speaking on behalf of Mr. Russo, he had absolutely no idea that he was doing anything that would violate your ordinances. He obviously respects them. He registered, took the course before he spoke to any county commissioners about the matter. And he understands that you take, appropriately, I believe, a very broad view of your lobbying ordinance, and you want to give it a maximum impact. But I would just suggest that Mr. Russo was not being completely unreasonable in his view that he was not lobbying, in effect, anybody, because a more traditional view of the scope of lobbying might not be as broad as your ordinance. And there's Supreme Court decisions and other authorities that really look to lobbying as advocating before a decision maker on a specifically pending item, and that certainly didn't happen here. I think we all agree with that. So I would summarize by saying that Mr. Russo has some significant equities in his favor. I think ultimately a legal position that is not inconsiderable, but nevertheless his goal is to be compliant, to be respectful of your ordinances, your role, and we do not object to the recommendation that Mr. Murawski has presented, that the complaint be dismissed and that a letter of instruction be issued.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Coffey. A couple questions, Well, first I'll let my fellow commissioners if they have any questions.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Russo, I'm a little bit unclear. So I heard, Mr. Coffey, that you mentioned that Mr. Trump's lobbyist is Mr. Jimenez Jr. Is that the mayor's son?
Yes, and for that reason, he was not available to assist with this. And so Mr. Russo sort of got grafted into an unfamiliar role.
And what's Mr. Russo's relationship to Mr. Trump? He's an attorney?
No, he's not an attorney. He is a consultant who's an environmental consultant, and most of his work, or as far as I know, the vast majority of his work deals with Doral and the Trump National Resort there and issues there. So this was a very unfamiliar and unexpected role for Mr. Russo.
But his purpose was to essentially substitute for the mayor's son as a lobbyist. I mean, I'm trying to just be clear. When you injected the name Jimenez Jr., obviously it draws attention to the fact that it sounds like very similar to the mayor's son. And you're telling me the mayor's son is the lobbyist of Trump, and then Mr. Russo was drafted because certainly there would be a direct conflict of interest, or let me not reach that conclusion, but there appears to be anyway. So wasn't Mr. Russo drafted to substitute as a lobbyist in this case, and did so without?
In his mind, it never got that far, because remember, they're
He just said it was an informational.
They're exchanging ideas, because there was never a specific proposal that the county was considering. There was never an agenda item, even for this, what we would submit as an unusual creature in creation, the Crandon Park Master Advisory Committee. So it never got to a point of traditional lobbying, and I assume if it had, as Mr. Russo described it and as the advocate confirmed, once he'd sort of really come to understand the processes, they might very well have retained a different lobbyist, or there are a few scenarios there. Not only did Mr. Jimenez Jr. exclude himself, but the mayor also excluded himself from anything to do with the issue.
Understood.
And if I can add this, Mr. Chairman, I think that's one of the reasons that Mr. Russo was really not operating with the same knowledge that, for example, a regular lobbyist would have, or somebody who's in that line of work. He simply wasn't, and was involved in what he understood to be the initial information exchange role.
Has he ever been registered as a lobbyist anywhere that you're aware of?
To my knowledge, no. His first registration came after this issue surfaced, and he of course registered, as we've talked about, and then did meet with some of the county commissioners.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Questions?
No.
No questions? Any questions?
At what point did he register to be a lobbyist again? At what point?
I believe it was February of this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we'll go ahead and vote on the recommendation in open session. If you want to wait, Mr. Coffey, for that vote.
Okay.
Or you're welcome to leave. Wait outside. I'm sorry. We have a couple of other matters we need to address. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, then, if you would like to just go to 1504 and 1506, which are the related complaints. There's no one here on behalf of those individuals, as far as I know. 1504 would be the allegation against Mr. Trump for failing to register as a lobbyist while he was having a discussion with the mayor while on the golf course. I think we've done a pretty good investigation here as to what happened on the golf course, and I think we have a situation where a couple of guys are playing golf and talking about a whole lot of things, and the mayor said at some point they were talking about the possibility of maybe having a movie studio down here, and Trump likes to invest down here. He's got a lot of other properties down
You
here.
interviewed the mayor?
Yeah.
And this is what he said.
I'm sorry?
He said they were talking about a movie studio?
Yes. And
But didn't the other thing say that the mayor, did I read it wrong, that the mayor and Trump had a contentious conversation?
according to Mr. Russo, that's what happened. That Trump basically said to the mayor, like, you know, what are you doing here? You got this nice location and it looks like crap. And I mean, I could make it better. So
That was the nature of the contentious conversation.
yeah,
That was all.
That was kind of it.
Okay.
And Trump,
That sounds like Trump.
I'm sorry.
Trump's son is his lobbyist.
I'm sorry?
No,
The
Jimenez's
mayor's son. I'm
Jimenez's
sorry, the
son.
mayor's
Yes.
son, not Trump's.
Right. Which is why early in the process, actually, Mayor Jimenez recused himself from the entire process and said, I'm not going to get involved with this because my son works for Mr. Trump. In any
Guys on
event,
the golf course,
I'm
having
sorry,
conversation, two guys,
two guys on the
Mayor
golf
and
course.
Mr. Trump,
Yes,
on Key Biscayne.
yes. And
Okay.
what happens, Mr.
Palm
Trump...
Beach?
No, it's
Brandon.
Brandon.
Oh, they're in Brandon. They're on the golf course that,
They play
Playing golf.
Trump on Palm Beach.
okay.
Oh, that was prior to that. But in any event, so there is a conversation at some point about, I can make this better. What do I have to do to make it better? Let me just buy it. And the mayor tells him, well, you can't just buy it. And what you have to do is, at some point in time, when they finish the golf game, the mayor comes back and tells his people here in the county, look, send a letter to Mr. Trump telling him what he could possibly do if he wants to manage the property. He gets together Jack Cardis, Michael Spring, a couple other people from the county, takes them a month or 2 or 3 months to draft a letter that goes to Mr. Trump that says, look, here's section, whatever the section is of Florida statutes that talks about unsolicited proposals.
Can I interrupt you there? So the mayor recused himself
Right, he said, I'm
right
not,
away,
I'm
once
not
he
going to...
recognizes, hey, there could be a conflict.
Yeah, he said, I'm not going to get involved with this. He assigned it to other people to say,
Okay,
hey,
because I know that there's
you
another
guys
complaint
respond to
coming
Trump.
up against the mayor, right? On the
Yes.
same issue. So just trying to get all the facts so we don't need to repeat it on the next one.
Right.
Okay, at what point did the mayor recuse himself? Right after the golf?
It was soon after. I mean, this whole from the time they played the golf game until the time anything really happened, you're talking about 6, 7, 8 months that go by before the letter is sent from the county to Mr. Trump saying, look, if you want to give us an unsolicited proposal, this is the process that you have to follow.
You have to pay $25,000.
You have to send us a check for $25,000, you have to do all this stuff, which Mr. Trump in the end did. He sent a check and he sent a proposal. The county gets it and they start to evaluate it, and then, if they think it's a good idea, what they would do is actually put out an RFP. And they would say, okay, you gave us a good idea, and if you want to compete for it, you could compete for it.
For sake of the other complaint that was filed against the mayor, when did the mayor recuse himself?
I don't know that I can tell you the exact date, but I know it was early in the process. It was...
Well, you said there were 6, 7 months, and then
Yeah,
the county
I'm
sent
saying
this
that
letter.
here,
So
in March,
you're saying
March
between that-
5th of 2014, Mr. Trump sent the mayor a follow-up letter on his proposal and said, let me know what the next steps are that we need to take to move this process forward. That was in March of 2014.
Let's just take it one at a time, because obviously I don't, I hate to use this word, I don't want to trump you. I really didn't want to use that, but
I mean, actually, the issue of his
so
son
let's go with Mr. Trump's
The issue of the mayor's son being a lobbyist is not really an issue in this case. That's
I find
not
that
an
so
issue.
odd.
Yeah.
How that's, okay.
That's not really what any of the allegations are. The allegation in this particular case against Donald Trump is that he didn't register as a lobbyist, okay?
Okay, and your conclusion is obviously no
The
probable
conclusion
cause
is he wasn't a lobbyist. And this, we covered this in the David Beckham case, when Mr. Beckham met with some county commissioners and met with the mayor initially to discuss his proposal of having a soccer stadium here in Miami-Dade County. We concluded in that case that there's a certain, for lack of a better term, meet and greet period where you can generally discuss ideas where you're not considering, there's nothing concrete in the pipeline, there's nothing to be voted on, there's nothing for them to do. In this particular case, when they were having a conversation on the golf course, there was no action for Jimenez to take or any decision or recommendation for him to do. I mean, all he said was, I have an idea, and he said, okay, fine, I'll tell you how to put that into motion. We can get that into the pipeline, and at some point in time, maybe it'll become something specific or some particular solicitation that, again, might be considered by the county commission, so that some future time, if you want to lobby people about it, you can lobby us about it. This is consistent with, again, what we found in the Beckham case, in an INQ 1275, where we said that the president of Cisco's globalization division could meet with the mayor to discuss in general terms Cisco's activities because there was no issues related to those activities currently pending in the county. It's like INQ 1197 that talked about a biomedical device manufacturer that he didn't have to register as a lobbyist to speak with a Jackson physician concerning a product sample. And then just going through what this commission has generally discovered as lobbying activities, meetings or communications with elected officials to discuss a particular solicitation or a product, or there was really nothing concrete at this time that was could qualify as a particular solicitation or a product.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was there, other than this initial, and let's call it meet and greet, because in your opinion it's a meet and greet, in Mr. Crespo's letter he says it shouldn't be considered a meet and greet because well known that Trump is in his view, a consultant under Section 2-11.1S 1B. What other, if any, communications were had between the mayor and Mr. Trump on this issue besides the initial meet and greet? Anything that you discovered in your investigation?
Not many. I think I could look at what the mayor told us. So, March 5th, 2014, Trump sends a letter to Jimenez. Jimenez then delegates the response to the letter to Jack Cardis, the parks director. So Jimenez doesn't even respond to that personally. And I think the mayor told us he had one conversation with him further on at the opening of the Blue Monster golf course. I guess that's the one in Doral, and that was in February of 2014.
So that was before the March 15, 2014.
Yeah, that's.
Referral to Jack
But that was
Cardis,
after they. But it was
Jack
after
Cardis, who is the head of parks for the county, correct?
Yes, sir. But the Blue Monster. Remember, the golf course conversation took place in 2013.
Understood.
So.
But then there's a February meeting in 2014 at the Blue Monster in Doral, which is owned by Trump.
Yes.
And why wouldn't that be considered a lobby?
There's no indications that they talked about the Crandon deal.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Talked about other stuff.
Oh, that's just a meeting.
Yeah.
They got, okay. Okay, I thought it was in there because there was something more
And
substantive.
there's no indication that
His son.
his son and Jimenez ever talked about this, ever?
That Jimenez and,
And his son ever talked about this?
Oh, I don't know. As far as I know, Mr. Jimenez, Mayor Jimenez's son was not involved in this deal whatsoever. Mayor Jimenez's son, in previous opinions that we've given him, does not lobby the county. So there's no indication that the mayor's son was involved in this deal at all. He's involved in.
Lobby.
He was involved in some things going on in Doral.
Okay. Doral being a city in the county.
Right, but he would have to separately register with the city of Doral, not with Miami-Dade County officials.
Lobby at all in our county. Okay. Any questions from my fellow commissioners?
Did you ask Mayor Jimenez if he and his son had ever talked about it casually or otherwise?
Supper.
I don't recall if I ever asked him that.
Family question.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
And then,
Alrighty.
so the last piece of the puzzle is, I guess, 1506. That is the complaint against the mayor.
Goodness gracious.
And,
For the same facts.
well, it's the exact same facts, but we were a bit unclear about what he was alleging the mayor did. What we came up with was that there is a section of our code that I've cited that talks about section 2-11-1SB sub 10, It says, "All members of the county commission and all county personnel shall be diligent to ascertain whether persons required to register have complied." And I believe Mr. Crespo's allegation here was that Jimenez was not diligent in ascertaining whether or not Trump was registered as a lobbyist when they were out on the golf course.
So he was
And-
Is there an
derelict in his
attachment
duty.
to this complaint form?
I'm sorry?
Sorry?
Is there an attachment to the complaint form that talks in more details?
To,
Certainly, you can look at the other one.
I think it's all contained in the other one.
Okay, so
You
it's,
go to 1504.
so the one that's for Carlos Jimenez, the attachment for Carlos Jimenez is included in
I
1504?
believe it should be.
Okay.
Let me see.
1504, well, those are the articles, newspaper articles.
Okay.
And that's 15,
Okay. So I guess it's all the same one. All right, sorry.
So since it is there. So since the conclusion was that Mr. Trump was not required to be registered as a lobbyist because he wasn't lobbying on the golf course, then there would be no need for the mayor to ascertain diligently whether or not Mr. Trump was registered as a lobbyist.
In this whole trilogy, as you mentioned, no one was really actively being a lobbyist.
I'm sorry.
In this whole, the three cases, no one was actively being a lobbyist.
Well, only at the end, I think Mr. Russo.
After he
finally.
registered. Okay, okay,
it certainly, even by Mr. Coffey's own admission, Mr. Russo was.
Right.
okay.
I mean, once
Well, I guess what he was trying to say is, hey, if we went to trial, there'd be a defense and so forth, then certainly he's entitled to that due process, but certainly it appears that he is agreeing that there's probable cause, at least.
yes,
And I'm referring to
as
Mr. Russo.
Okay.
Does any of that, for Mr. Rousseau, attach to any of the others in any way? I mean, he was all, you know what I mean? Mr. Rousseau just didn't magically appear, and then...
No, he didn't.
It all stemmed from the initial
Right, and
conversations.
what happened is that Mr. Trump asked the county in writing, hey, what do I need to do to make this happen? County sends him a big, long letter, says, here's all the rules and procedures and processes you have to follow and laws you have to comply with, and send us $25,000. Mr. Trump does that.
It was $25,000 for?
Cost of doing business, I mean, it's the cost of having staff people, review the application and do whatever it is. If it needs to go to an RFP, that part and parcel of you paying for that.
And that's a standard amount, or it's based on the amount of?
It's by statute, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Correct. So, I'm sorry, I just wanted you to finish your statement. So after the $25,000 is
right, so
when
now,
Mr. Rousseau...
so now things are in the pipeline. Now there's a bunch of people who have been designated by the mayor to handle this, and Russo starts meeting with those people. He basically shows up and says, what do I need to do, fellas? And then they tell him, well, these are the 5,000 things you need to do in order to make this happen. And the reason, one of the things that apparently was an issue is the cutting back of whatever they call those plants that grow near the water. Mangroves. Cutting back the mangroves in Crandon Park to give a better view of the skyline, and that is an environmental nightmare. So that's why Mr. Russo, who's an environmental person, came in on the scene to try to figure out what needed to be done with that.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
So if we could move to 1513, which again, it was campaign season in the city of Doral.